Hi everybody, Adam Hayes here, author of the Zoltan Chronicles. I'm just making another video here, an instructional video on how I make some of my fantasy maps. Not too long ago, I received a message on Facebook from one of my fans asking if I could provide some more details as to how you would go about turning your fantasy map into a plot. So I think that's what we're going to focus on here today. So let's get started, shall we? I have here a basic map, which I've made it in, again, incarnate.com. I've done some little bit of detail work, kind of dress it up a little bit, but should be enough to play around with. So for starters, let's throw in some places, particularly cities and stuff, because if we're going to be building a world, fantasy worlds need people, they need cities. So let's get started. So we're going to start with a city. Do a walled city. They always start out so big. Probably because I'm in the wrong version. That's okay. We'll make it work. Okay, we're going to put one city here. And we'll put another one down here. Another one down here. And another one over here. And let's throw in a different kind of city, shall we? Because we need to have enough to work with. Yeah, one of these guys. Scale that up just a bit. Alright, this should be enough to work with. I'm not going to waste any time coming up with names or anything at the moment. We're going to assume these are human cities because humans are fine to work with. But it can be anything, orc, elf, dwarf, centaur, completely made up thing, whatever you like. Just as long as you've got a basic world with some people living in it, we've got enough to get started. So let's suppose our main character, we'll call him Bob. Bob lives from this northern city here, and his lifelong dream is to be a sailor. He wants to go off and adventure in the seas and slay sea serpents, do whatever it is sailors do. I moved it a little bit, just you'll see why. So the question is, how would geography impact the story? Well, if Bob is from the coastal city, that would be relatively straightforward. You just send him into the water. But what if instead Bob's from the city that's down here, which is inland? That's going to be a bit difficult. He's going to have to go into some sort of journey, leave his family and friends behind, meet new friends along the way. There'd be an adventure just from getting him from his home to the coastline. But in this case, Bob's from this place in the north, so no problem, right? He'd just get on a boat, sail away, and there's the end of your story. So let's make one small change to the geography here, and you'll see why geography is important. Scale that down just a... Now let's assume for the sake of argument that this one geographic feature is to scale. How does this impact Bob's life and his adventures? Well, if he leaves the city here, he's going to encounter probably earthquakes and tsunamis and floods and fire and brimstone raining down from the sky. A volcano this size, a caldera with that scale, maybe it needs some kind of supernatural explanation. Maybe there's a titan in there or something. That's a pretty big deal. You have to make sure that you account for that. In fact, a volcano this size would not just have an impact on your character, it would have a significant impact on the other geographic features. For example, if there was a volcano this big, would you put a city right there? Probably not. So if we're going to keep this side, we're going to keep this feature here. Let's do this. That, I think, makes a lot more sense because you're still going to see the occasional earthquake from fault lines, etc., but it's a safer distance. So seeing as how we've moved our city, let's add in something additional feature here just to show you. Let's see. Scale that one up. Again, I'm not really doing this to scale right now. It's just as an example, but give you kind of an idea. A little smaller. Give you kind of an idea of what this all looks like. Now, I've put an abandoned town here. Now, what does that tell you? Well, you would never, as we just discussed, you would never put a community that close to an active volcano, depending on the scale here. But if there's an abandoned village here, that suggests this volcano might not have always been here. So there's a bit of a backstory here. You're beginning to develop your plot. Maybe there's a great disaster that befell your world way back when, causing this massive feature to erupt from the ground. And maybe when Bob goes on his adventure, he's off to discover that. All types of things you need to consider when building a world. So yeah, your geographic features need to be reasonably believable. Another example I'm going to go with, this is going to be a relatively short video, is we'll go with this city down here. Now let's suppose that instead of Bob, we're working with Steve. Now Steve is from this village, and the woman he's in love with lives down here. So how would Steve get there? Well, there's basically two ways to do it. You could travel overland, or you could travel all the way around the continent and probably down underneath. Or at least you could if I had bothered to make that properly. Let's make a little adjustment here. Which actually highlights an important point. Don't be afraid to make alterations to your map as you see fit. So there you go. Now Steve could travel all the way around the continent and through the little channel here just to visit his wife or his girlfriend. But a few key points you got to keep in mind. Seeing as how this point and this point are so narrow, I'm not even sure if that's actually connected. I can't really see it the scale. But what it tells you is that these positions here would be of enormous geographic significance. You would expect to see trade ships traveling through there. You would expect to see military vessels. There would be significant ports all around here, which would pop up to provide resources and resupply to the various trade ships that would travel through here. These are things you have to keep in mind. So if you want your world to be believable, consider how, if you were to develop a country in a world like this, where would you put the cities? Why would you put them there? And what impact would their locations have on how people interact? Anyways, those are just some good basic examples. Yeah, I think that'll be good for now. We'll see you next time. All right. Thanks very much. Bye.